Hi,
Hello, sir.
what do you think about veganism?
Mm. I was vegan for a while, and I thought it was a very interesting way of exploring how diet affects my body. But ultimately, it didn't feel quite right. Intuitively, felt like something was missing. I'm not sure why. I couldn't actually put my finger on it. But doing it on a mainly plant-based perspective and not, using vegan substitutes, but actually trying to eat as clean as possible, it still didn't really work out. So I went back to meat eating. And although I couldn't morally advocate it in the same way anymore, I felt like this organism that I'm using, this human body that's taken millions of years to evolve to this stage, works more optimally on a meat based diet.
Okay, so do you think it was the diet's fault for you being sick, or do you think it was the way you used the diet, or how much you ate? Was it the restriction of being a vegan that meant that you were ill, or was it how what you ate and how much you ate?
Yeah, it was difficult to work out that exactly what it was. At the time, I was going through a couple of health issues, so I don't think I had the best, say, energetic attitude to the diet. It was probably more sacrificial. The perspective was one of like negating perhaps my intuition to just try it out. So it wasn't a particular healthy way of orienting towards
Hmm.
it. But yeah, to be honest, mate, I just don't know. I just felt that after oscillating between various different diets for a long time, I finally landed on the diet of intuition. So I listen to the body. If the body says it needs this, I feel like I can really tune in now. And that generally means meat bi weekly, like no more than that. Maybe just fish, something very simple, and that's it. So I don't subscribe to any particular, you know, ideology, let's say, because I found that doing that was limiting.
Okay, that
Does
that's
that make sense?
interesting. I mean, yeah, I mean, I've heard stories of like people who've been vegan and then stopped being vegan, and usually, if you look into what their vegan diet was, it was like raw vegan, or it was like they didn't eat that eat much calories, they ate a lot of sugar or something. It's just they ate just a bad diet and blamed it on veganism. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that's the case with you. I don't know what's the case with you because I don't know you,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not
Mm-hmm.
an advocate for this website called Challenge 22, but it's a really good website because what you can do is you can say your problems that you've had with veganism or whatever, and they can give you like a 22-day vegan meal plan to correlate with you individually. Uh, so I can,
Okay. And are you advocating any particular side of this conversation as well?
I mean, I'm a vegan, so I'm just kind of
I
most people
see.
on Amigo aren't vegan, so I'm just asking why and trying to educate
Okay.
them on the ethics. I'm mainly on the ethics because I just subscribe
Mm,
to the American Dietetic Association and the World Health Organization when they say that a vegan diet is healthful and nutritionally adequate for all
mm,
stages of the life cycle. Uh, so
yeah. Well, I've looked at that, and something interesting happened to me in the last year or so, anyway. Because yeah, I was struggling with the moral. You know, I always look to be as integral as possible and follow a moral kind of conduct that is as high as, say, I could achieve. But in diving into psychedelics, specifically plant medicine like ayahuasca, if you've heard of this,
no, but I can understand.
and yeah, and and diving deeper into kind of the metaphysics and the energetic vibrational aspect of reality and really tuning into what is literally, I'd say, other realities, other dimensions, it comes to be a kind of deeper perspective where it's more about the energy that's brought to the consumption of the food that's more important than the food itself, regardless of what that is. So you might look at an example as something like the movie Avatar actually shows this metaphorically quite well in that the Na'vi blue beings have such a integrated connection to Mother Nature and yet still hunt the animals, but they hunt it from a perspective where it's so deeply respectful that there's a blessing, there's a whole ritual around the killing. They only eat what is
Yeah.
necessary, and then they bless the animal. They thank you so much. The energy's there, and there's an exchange, and they recognize that that being, you know, from their philosophical perspective in the movie, which isn't real life. It's a utopian movie, but kind of shows that the soul of that being will be reincarnated, and so the energy is not dissolved. But that's totally different to what we have today, which is factory farming, where beings are just put in the worst possible conditions and live a life of pure fear and die in a way that isn't very ethical. So giving you that very stark contrast, I seem to sit somewhere in the middle where now the food, when I do eat meat, it's very much this respectful thing of recognizing that that being has died just for my taste buds in this situation, but it's gone deeper than taste buds. It's gone to the level of intuition, of feeling like the body needs that, and knowing that I am not just this body too, that I'm kind of a spirit within this body. So it's almost like, you know, I really explored this in a very empirical way, and this is where I've got to.
Okay. If I just go back a bit,
Yeah.
what was your like initial reason to go vegan? Did you say it was just like an experiment, so just kind of trying something out? It wasn't like a hard reason.
It it was it was partly watching vegan documentaries, the hardcore ones, and watching the suffering. Um, and it was partly from a health perspective. I had candida at the time. If you're aware of that, it's kind of like a imbalance of gut bacteria. And so yeah, they went hand in hand, and I jumped into it, and I fully I fully took on the identity as a vegan to the point where I was so attached to the philosophy too that I saw a lot of hate and disdain for those who weren't vegan as well during that process, and it was just very interesting
Mm.
to watch that
Yeah,
happen.
it was kind of
But yeah,
yeah. It was
go
kind
on.
of the same for me when I was vegan to begin with. I was like very angry that people could support these
Mm,
industries and also knowingly support them. Like I knew people who knew about it.
mm,
I've told people about it, but they're willing to go on and support these industries when they know that there is another option. So
mm,
I can definitely relate to that.
mm, mm. Yeah, it's an interesting debate. I can see the rise of it. I see the necessity so much for using our money as a form of
Mm.
voting to actively align ourselves with the world we want to be in and just vote on that. And to me, the way I also look at that is I only shop at local organic stores in Melbourne, in Australia, where I am now. So I'm English, but I'm in Australia. And they have these locally sourced markets. They're not any big corporations, and all the food that I buy is locally sourced. So also from a perspective of an environmental perspective, of like how much carbon or resources or water is being used for the products. These are all locally sourced. They haven't been flown in from anywhere. And I actually think that some vegan diets, not all, but some vegetarian diets, if they're still going to Tesco's and buying vegan substitutes, I mean, I think it's important to consider how much resources, how much fuel and carbon is being used to actually produce and then ship these things around the world.
Yeah,
Um,
but yeah, I
and
think your situation is very like is kind of the best situation to be in. You've got like loads of local places nearby that you can
mhm,
buy from, and you can buy from uh, well that you've got the financial capability to do so. A lot of
mhm,
people like live next to a Tesco's, and they have to go a long,
mhm,
long way to get to local places. And I think it's a good starting point if they wanted to do good for the environment and good for the planet. Going vegan and buying vegan substitutes is definitely a step in the right direction, and it's a
mhm,
massive step. It's a massive step just to
mhm,
go vegan number one, and then you can transition to getting locally sourced stuff later down the line. But I think the first
mhm,
point, of course, should be vegan because just
mhm.
the impact that has. I mean, have you watched a film called Cowspiracy?
Yes, I've watched Conspiracy.
Yeah,
I haven't watched the new movie that people are talking about. I think it's called Challenge something actually.
Game Changers.
Game Changers, that's the one. Yeah,
Yeah,
write that down. Um,
yeah, I need to watch that.
yeah,
That pretty good.
yeah. It's
Did you get any like new?
yeah, it is the first step.
Did you like get any nutritional guidance when you were transitioning to veganism? Like, did you like go online and like figure out what to eat, and or did you just kind of go into it like winged it, or did you?
Mm, I watched YouTube videos on it mainly from people who looked like they knew what they were doing. I didn't get any blood tests or nutritional tests. Actually, I did get a hair test done at the time, hair mineral analysis, which broke down whether or not what vitamins I had in the body, which minerals I was or wasn't deficient in, which foods I was or wasn't intolerant to,
Mhm.
and nothing serious came up. Actually, it was all good. But I didn't have any blood tests. It's a strange thing. I'm almost. I mean, I think about. I feel like, yeah, you're right. I'm in a different situation. I'm very unique. Whenever I have these conversations with people, they often see that the position I'm in is very unique. Yeah, and you're right. I think it is important that people move to veganism first, if only to disassociate from the conditioning of their primary diet and perhaps the propaganda that they've been served, and then reorient themselves to a new way. And also perhaps do what I did eventually, which is to really tune into their body and listen to what isn't working in them, because everyone's body is so radically different, and you can work out what you're intolerant to and what doesn't work for you, just by listening in.
Mm.
Um,
So was it kind of like
and I'm very much
was it like a psychological thing? Like you didn't feel you were mentally you didn't feel well mentally, or was it kind of physically like you felt ill being vegan?
some weird stuff was happening. So my teeth started cracking. This was about 2 years in, between being vegan or vegetarian, and my teeth were cracking in different areas of the mouth, and my dentist was really confused. And I wasn't eating refined sugar. I don't really eat snacks of any sugary kind. The diet was very plant based. It was very clean. Um, I mean, it was. I mean, it was stupidly clean. I'm not even doing fried foods.
Wow.
Just stuff is.
So
You know,
was it raw vegan?
it wasn't raw. I cook everything. I
Right.
didn't work with raw vegan. I tested it in my body for about a week, and I was like, nah, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
I need warm food, or my body gets cold. I get cold hands and feet if I don't cook foods. And actually, I found out later on that that's deeply correlated to in Hindu philosophy they have the doshas, um, which you which are like basically four primary um, body types, which have four different types of diets related to them. And this goes back for thousands of years, and I found it very very accurate for me personally in how it helped figure out what my diet is. It will say like people that are tall and slender and have dry skin and dry hair and dry this or vata, and so they can't eat cold foods because their body is already a little bit colder and more sensitive to temperate foods. So you need to warm up the food a little bit. It's strange how they've worked out on this subtle level that there are just four types, but it's worth exploring.
That's
Um,
interesting. What what was your
but
was your tra
that's
was your transition to veganism like really kind of like a massive change? Like it was straight to veganism, straight to completely no vegan alternatives, just straight to plants or just all plants.
veggie and then
Yeah.
vegan.
Oh, okay.
It was,
So
yeah, it was fairly
yeah, gradual.
quick to
Yeah.
vegetarian, and it felt radical. I mean, this is 5 years ago as well. Um, I feel like even 5 years ago there were so many less people that I knew that even considered veggie and vegan
Mm.
stuff.
Would you?
It was that, and then it transitioned into veganism probably over 3 to 6 months.
And how long were you vegan for?
6 months,
All right. And was it like a
roughly.
was it like a big decision going back to eating meat? Or were you just like, oh, veganism was so stupid? Or did you take a lot of time to think about it?
Huge.
Mm.
Oh, it was huge. It was so huge. It was on the level of, this isn't really even exaggerating. It will sound like I'm exaggerating, but it was on the level of me sitting down and being like, this is me doing cocaine for the first time. It felt like a drug because I had been so emotionally, philosophically, ideologically uh, identifying with veganism, that to break that was basically breaking my ego. It was the same as an ego death.
Mm.
It was like, who am I then if I'm not this? Because I think I'm supposed to be this moral person. How can I go backwards?
Mm.
But I can tell you that my body was giving me signals that it wanted to eat meat, and it didn't matter how many different pea protein or hemp protein powders I tried, or other protein alternatives. It just wasn't the same. And yeah, I went back, and I actually went to a restaurant in London with one of my friends. We went to a chicken restaurant. He was not vegan. He knew I'd been vegan or vegetarian for a couple of years, and this was my first time, and I had this chicken sit in front of me, and the waitress put it down, and Tom was like, man, you look like you've seen a ghost. And I was like, I feel like I'm doing hard drugs for the first time. This is how different it is. Yeah. So yeah, it was huge. But you're probably aware of, say, someone like Tim Sheaf,
I think so.
Timothy Sheaf.
Rings a
He's
bell.
runs a YouTube channel. He was probably one of the biggest vegan kind of influencers, let's say, a few years ago. And then he was on the ninja program on British TV where they do the parkour ninja climbing. And I've been speaking to him recently, and he came out as breaking his veganism, and his whole following base. I mean, you're talking over 150k subscribers on YouTube, and everything was based on vegan diet. He had a vegan clothing range, everything, and then he broke that, and it caused a massive backlash across the vegan community. But he was saying a similar thing. I mean, his bones were he was getting problems where his bones were cracking and stuff. So ultimately, it's
Wow.
strange because there's another extreme right wing group, let's say, against veganism, actual anti veganism groups that are growing on YouTube, and they make kind of weird compilation videos of people and YouTube influencers that have deteriorated over time from, say, when they started veganism to 5 years later, and you can see the change in their videos, and it really is quite pronounced. And I watch them just out of curiosity, but it is all there's no studies around that, and who knows what other data points could be affecting people, whether it's
Mm.
their environment or whatever. There's just too many
Yeah.
to really pinpoint it. So that's why I go back to intuition, and I think intuition is literally a lost art in our civilization, because all wisdom and inspiration and everything comes from intuition. It doesn't come from books. That's a secondary source. The primary source is inside.
Yeah. But my question is, do you think that you going to eating meat, do you think the sole reason of that was the vegan diet's restrictions, like giving up meat, fish, and cow's milk, like that completely ruined your health, or was it what you did with the vegan diet? So what you ate every day, how much you ate every day. what vitamins you ate. Did you supplement with B12, for
Mm,
example?
yeah, I took B12 for a while. I didn't actively try to hit the entire spectrum of the nutritional potential of my body and really like say jot it down on one of the health apps that tells you if you're hitting everything. You know what I mean? Where you have health apps, you type in food and it will tell you what you've hit and your RDAs and
Yeah.
etc. I didn't do that. But I was eating, basically I would eat by color. So I would go through all the plants and I would mix
Okay.
them up and make sure I ate colors from all of them, just to really mix it up and feel like I was getting a really wide diet. And I didn't limit myself. But whether I didn't eat enough, I mean, I was eating 3 meals a day. I was mostly working from home, which meant that I always had access to the cleanest, farm produce. I
Mm.
was shopping at local farms and Sainsbury's, basically a mix of the two. You know, what I couldn't get from the farm, I went to the supermarket to get, but that was mainly household items, really, household products. So yeah, I don't know, mate. It's really difficult to tell. It could have well been that I just wasn't getting, say, the calcium necessary, so my bones, my teeth were cracking or something. I really don't know. Um,
Have you heard of a website called
no,
nutritionfacts.org?
but I'll write it down.
Okay, definitely check that out. That's like a really useful resource. It's basically this guy who's compiled like loads of vegan info on like what foods to eat, how to be
Hmm.
the healthiest you can, not just being a vegan, but just being the healthiest on a plant-based diet. And he does loads and loads of videos, loads of articles and stuff, and it's just a great resource. It's like unbiased
Mm,
science, so
okay.
definitely check that out. He also has this app called Dr. Gregor's. I don't know, like it was like one of those health apps you said, and it kind of gives you an idea of what you should be eating every day, like how many portions
Hmm.
of different foods. I don't use it, but it might help you. I mean, I've never actually really thought about health related things that much. I've just been healthy enough, since starting vegan. But again, I'm a different person to you. But I definitely would
Mm,
recommend
yeah, no, I'll check that out.
nutritionfacts.org. Uh,
Um, I also, when I went back to being something that I didn't do previously when I was eating meat, and then I did when I went back to it, is I wasn't actually eating very much meat, but I was consuming bone broths. And bone broths, I really felt a significant difference from. Even my skin was changing and stuff, to look completely different. And I was feeling like, I guess bone broths aren't vegan, aren't they? Yeah, of course they're not. I was going to say, I'm surprised that people don't drink bone broths because it's not actually the meat. The bones get thrown away and then someone buys the bones and then they make the bone broth from them. So, I mean, that will sound disgusting to a veganism, but if you look at you haven't heard of it. It's
I've never
really
heard of
big
it
out
really.
here. It's really big out in Melbourne,
Wow.
because bone broth's been used for so long, and actually, a lot of some are arguing. You can look online, type in like. I often go to Dr. Axe as a practitioner for diet and herbal medicine and so on. It's very interesting dude, and he has advocated veganism. But they were saying that actually, from a meat eating diet, the some of the collagen that we get from the tissues that connects to the bones is actually some of the most nutritional parts. And anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that, but it's just something to consider. All I would say is that I really do honor and appreciate the shift towards veganism, and I think it's absolutely essential for kind of the shift in consciousness that's required as well to bring about a civilization that gets out of this kind of divisional, and fairly violent society and moves towards something that's a lot more aligned for the future, both ecologically and across the whole spectrum, really. But I wouldn't limit yourself if your intuition does call you to eat meat again, if only to explore your personal experience of being human and look at things from an empirical standpoint, because I know scientifically we can always argue that anecdotal evidence is not necessarily the best. It's better to look at larger, wider studies. But people are so different, dude. So really look at it from a personal perspective, because what works for you might not work for someone else. You know, what's a traumatic experience for someone isn't a traumatic experience for someone else. We have such a widely different spectrum of experiences. So it's really important to feel it out personally. And that's ultimately even what spirituality just is itself, you know, just exploring ourselves.
That is interesting. But if you wanted to go vegan again at any point, do you think there would be a way of going vegan and not having those
Yes,
health problems that you
I think it's
described?
possible. Um,
Hmm.
I think
Would
I
you ever
will,
like try that at any point?
because I'm always experimenting. And that website that I just posted in the chat just here, that's the site that I run. Um, it's got quite a large following, and it has generally
Mm.
been an exploration of
Oh right.
me diving into all sorts of philosophies, both Eastern and West, and different diets and different modalities of exploring consciousness through psychedelics and whatnot. And I think you'll find it really interesting because, yeah, there's articles on veganism on there
I'll
because
have a
I
look.
advocated it for so long, but there's articles on other ideologies as well. But yeah, I would consider that because I'm always exploring my personal experience. Just right now, what I'm doing feels good, feels aligned. I'm going with the intuition, and I must say, to be honest, like I haven't eaten meat in 5 weeks. I haven't eaten, or even fish. I've had just some eggs at one point.
So you're basically
So,
close to vegan right now.
yeah, no, it's very strange. I think if I've learned anything over just from having this website and exploring all of this over the last 6 years or so, it's just that any identification with a particular ideology, right, that isn't kind of inspired from your own source, from within. You know, inspired is to be in spirit. Intuition is
Yeah.
to have tuition from within, to be taught from within. Any subscription to an ideology that's outside yourself is generally limiting yourself. So you must. It's very important, I think, to oscillate between going into it and then going back out of it, and going in and going out. So you have that contrast.
I mean that is interesting. I mean, well, yeah. When I watched Earthlings, immediately after watching it, I got this intense like sadness in my body. Like I felt really sick, and I was like
Hmm.
looking at this like it's like a whole new world to me. Like I'd never considered animals. That I was
Hmm.
eating animals. Like it was just food. It was just something I'd just been doing all my life. But actually seeing their screams, their cries, and how almost human they are. The screams, they sound just like human screams, and their faces,
Hmm.
and it all just felt so connected to me. Like I felt like I was connected to these animals, although they look different, but we are
Hmm.
more or less very similar. So yeah, I just transitioned to veganism, and I didn't look back once. I
Hmm.
although when I watched Cowspiracy and a few other documentaries before Earthlings,
Hmm.
I I was vegan, but I did go back and out. Sometimes I ate some like cookies with butter and like
Hmm.
maybe a pancake or two of eggs, and I always
Hmm.
felt like a bit guilty about it. But because I hadn't been really connected to the vegan ideology, I just like, oh, it's really healthy, so I'll just be
Hmm.
vegan. But I was like, oh, but it tastes so nice, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
But so I didn't have that connection when I got with Earthlings. Like I was like, okay, this is serious. And also it was really weird because when I did eat the butter after being vegan for like a substantial amount of time,
Hmm.
it made my body feel really sick.
Hmm.
Not just like mentally, like oh my god, I'm eating butter from a cow, but it was like my body felt like not used to it. Like my body had adapted so much just not eating these products, and it made me feel how like alien these products are now. They're like
Hmm.
I'm because it's like I'm sick. I'm like continually being sick, eating butter all my life and eating meat and stuff, and my body's
Hmm.
so used to it, it doesn't have a reaction. And then when I do eat butter when I'm a vegan, it's like this sickness has come back. So I don't know.
I get that with milk. Um, I don't go
Hmm.
back to
Yeah.
dairy, and I haven't gone back to dairy. Out here, everyone orders coffee with almond milk or oat milk or whatever. Like, it's actually more popular than dairy, surprisingly, in Melbourne. There was an article about that recently.
All right.
Because I was lactose intolerant, so I still also don't have yogurt or dairy generally. The only thing I have is ghee, if you've heard of that, which is clarified butter. It's an
All
Indian
right.
form of butter. They cook it until all of the, what's the word that they use? All of the impurities come out of it. So it's just kind of the clarified aspect of butter. And that's basically it on the dairy side of things. But I realized the reason why I was not feeling good on the dairy, and I was getting a blocked up sinus, and I was not feeling good, and I was feeling sick, was, yeah, I was lactose intolerant. And largely, I think we are lactose intolerant because whose human
Yeah.
body is supposed to be drinking, you know, a substance that is made for a young being to be able to grow at certain stages in
Yeah.
its life, and then we force the cows to produce the milk and all the disgusting things they do to the cows. It's terrible.
That's
Yeah, yeah,
that's why like young people like stop puberty way earlier than they're supposed to because of the hormones from
yeah,
cow milk and dairy and
yeah.
stuff, which is really freaky. But yeah, why do you eat that butter? You've been it's delicious, or
It's not out of delicious. It's just that it feels good to have those animal fats in the body. So I use primarily coconut oil and olive oil, but occasionally I use ghee too in certain curries or on toast. Yeah, and I have vegan butter too. It's just part of it. I just feel really good when I have animal fats in in the whole diet. You know, it's not killing an animal.
wow,
The ghee is made from local grass-fed cows in Melbourne. They don't force the cows to lactate and take more milk than outside of when it's natural. I feel fine about that. The Indian philosophy, which is one of the deepest, most spiritual philosophies in the world, home of yoga and so on. They they're vegetarian, but they're not vegan. They're not against using the milk and the ghee and some other animal products that aren't killing animals. Their perspective is kind of one that's in the middle, and I do resonate with that. You know. But
uh,
I do also occasionally eat a steak, and it's very occasional, but it feels good. It's very strange. It feels really good in the body, almost like I.
so do you feel like unsatisfied until you eat a steak? So you
No, it's
feel like
kind of
complete
like
once you
this.
eat
It's
a
kind of
steak?
gradual. It's like a gradual thing.
An
It's like,
addition.
yeah, okay, I eat steak,
All
and
right.
I'm like, I don't need to eat steak for a while. That's cool. And then it might be 3 weeks, and then I get to 3 weeks, and suddenly I start to feel cravings within the body because I go to the marketplace and I walk around and I just get what I feel like eating. I hit the basics of like this bread or this vegan butter and whatnot. But after the basics, in terms of like what am I going to eat for dinner tonight, for example, suddenly I can see that I'll get the intuition pop in of like, yeah, some red meat would be necessary right now or would feel good right now, and then I cook it. And there's no conflict within me anymore. There's no vibrational conflict. It feels very much in line. And also, I know the being has been killed,
Wow.
and I recognize that that being has the same consciousness as I have. It's very baseline. It's very fundamental level of its existence. It shares the same awareness that it is alive, and so do all other beings. And I do recognize that. I think it is true that if a being dies in fear, and in suffering, you're also taking on that energetic level, because this all sounds very
Mm.
fluffy, I think, and I would have totally pushed this aside a few years ago when I was younger. I'm 28 now, but like when I was 22, let's say, this I would have been like, nah, this is bullshit. But from practicing yoga, because I'm a yoga teacher now and I study yoga twice a week for a year, um, and from yoga, there is a genuine expansion of intimacy with your experience and with reality, whereby there seems to be more data points and more information that comes through your experience, where you can process, that food doesn't feel good in me, and that food doesn't, and that taste doesn't, and that thought or energy isn't good, and that habit is or isn't good. And from that perspective, you can really tune in to what's right and what isn't, for you at that moment. And so I know there's probably not any data on this too, but it comes back to my first thing that I when you asked me the question on veganism, this was my answer, and that's that this body has 4 trillion cells in it, and it's taken like millennia to evolve, and it has largely evolved on a meat-based diet. And for whatever reason, this this particular vehicle that I'm in right now seems much more optimal on that meat diet. Because when I go out to the gym, dude, I can feel the difference. The next day when I wake up after a steak, it's like, oh, I can feel it running through my veins. And do you know what? It might be some strange, let's say, ancestral or collective thing, like a fire, that idea of like sitting around a fire with 5 other guys. That is such a prominent, almost like mythological thing that we've done for thousands of years, where we've all sat around the fire. And so it holds a very important place in our consciousness, and maybe meat eating has a similar thing, that we were always out for the hunt and we got the meat and we cooked the meat and we had this steak. And so perhaps that's what you're tapping into. I'm not sure. And maybe we don't need to tap into that anymore. But there is some weight to that. So I'm pointing out there's something tangible about that that process, and it feels ritualistic when I get this steak and I cook it and I eat it, because there's this ritual to it. There's this gratitude.
Mm. Yeah. My okay, that is really interesting. Um, since going back to eating meat, have you kind of not watched animal slaughter ever? Like you're kind of apart from it now, apart from that world of animal slaughter. You don't watch footage of
I
it.
haven't
You haven't
actively gone
returned to
out
documentaries.
and
You've just
watched
kind of
them.
like pushed it
I've
aside.
watched various health documentaries, some of which have
Mm.
been vegan focused, and generally they haven't been showing any footage like that. I have scrolled upon some stuff in my feeds because I like certain pages, and so they come up. There's also groups in Melbourne that will stand with TVs and anonymous masks,
Yeah,
and they'll
Anonymous the
play.
Voiceless. Yeah, I've been part of
Yeah,
that.
that's it. Yeah, and I've seen them a bunch of times, and they stand in the center, and I've stood and watched the stuff. But to me, I'm not involved in that process. I mean, I'm involved actively in the suffering of very few beings, when I eat the steak once a month, let's say. But I'm not buying from factory farms, so I'm not in that world. So when I watch it, I look at it with deep empathy and disdain. But I feel like I've been through that process now of coming to consciousness. Like at first, when people see it and they're like, "Wow, is that really what's going on behind closed doors?" And then you recognize it, and then you kind of integrate it into your experience by actively orienting yourself in a way that's aligned with that new information. That's like, I don't want to be part of that, right? And then so when I see that information now, it's like I don't feel like I'm part of that anymore. So it
Hmm.
doesn't cause friction in me, you know.
Do you think there is? You buy the steak from like a local organic place,
Uh-huh.
right? not factory farming. Do you think is that there's a substantial difference in amount of suffering that means that it's ethical to buy from a local place, or do you think it is unethical? You agree it's unethical, or do you believe it is ethical to buy from a local meat place?
So ultimately, from, you know, perhaps I've done too many psychedelics, but when I look at it now, it's that the being isn't, on one dimension, the being is suffering, and largely this is unnecessary suffering. But on another dimension, on a deeper level,
Hmm.
that being is going to be reincarnated, or the energy that being is going to be reincarnated into another level. So, I don't see it quite in the same way anymore as it being like, I'm trying to think how to put this in words without sounding totally mental. There's on one level there is suffering, but on another level there at the same time there is something that these beings and all beings share, which cannot suffer, which is not touched by pain, which is not touched by suffering. The consciousness as it is, as it's pure, is existing in a place of like pure boundlessness. And the ideal word to associate with that is love, boundless consciousness. And when that consciousness is kind of funneled into a cow's body, for example, yes, the so let's say the egoic dimension of the cow experiences suffering, but then its energy goes back into the whole again. And if you walk around in the world and see that eternal consciousness within all beings and all plants, you're not really in this divisional world of oh, that person's suffering and I'm not. You're in a place of when you see suffering, you feel their suffering because it's the same consciousness. So you can kind of play in these two worlds. It's really hard to condense into like just, that's a really large thing to try and convey. But that
Mm. And you said that unnecessary suffering is like separate from that.
well, generally by unnecessary suffering, I mean that like especially humans are experiencing the unnecessary suffering because most of it is psychological. Most of it is a gripping to the identity at death
Yeah.
or at the mini deaths we have in our lives when we have to change, make big life changes, etc. And the suffering comes from there, as opposed to any like and thus it's not necessary. Yeah, dude. I don't know. You probably it's just I don't know if that resonates, but
No, that makes sense. I mean, I've kind of looked into kind of the stuff that you kind of write
yeah,
about on your
nice.
website and stuff. I do yoga and like I do meditation and stuff. So I kind of understand. Uh, but you say like there's two different. I can't really rephrase what you said because it's a lot. But when you kill a cow, you understand that it's unnecessary. Well, you don't kill a cow, but when someone kills a cow for you, you understand it's unnecessary and that it's cruel on one level, but on another level, we all suffer and we're all connected. So it just goes into the whole
Energy.
whole. And you said reincarnate, that the cow will just reincarnate, but that's like that's like an idea. That's not. If we were looking at this on like a kind of like a
Hmm.
factual kind of what's actually
Hmm.
happening. A, a cow is getting their throat slit for a steak. If we just look at that just objectively, we can see the moral problem with that because that cow, it's against that cow's will and it's against that cow's needs just to be free, at least, just to have freedom. We're not even allowing that cow that, just complete freedom. And also, if we look on
Hmm.
another level, if we wouldn't put humans in the same situation, we wouldn't swap out for humans. It's specifically for cows. So I don't see the difference between a human and a cow that means
Hmm.
it's okay to slit a cow's
Yeah,
throat but
well,
not a human's
okay, on
throat.
your first point,
Because there's too many similarities.
the reincarnation perspective is purely conceptual if there hasn't been any direct experience with reincarnation, and something that I experienced in the last year was deep diving into ayahuasca plant medicine, where you literally, I mean, I was the most scientific, materialist, skeptical motherfucker when it comes to this kind of thing. And I watched previous lives of myself play out. I watched reincarnations, all this stuff that I was completely against, because I had no empirical evidence for it. And I thought it's just conceptual shit that people use to kind of bypass their own personal responsibilities in the world, right? But once it was experienced directly, it was, I could see that yes, it's not that the cow reincarnates, that I reincarnate me as a separate person. Daniel reincarnates. It's that the energy doesn't die. It gets placed into another aspect of reality or another incarnation or another thing. Even to say that the soul itself that carries over any personality into another incarnation is conceptual, because it doesn't. It's just that the base level of the consciousness gets moved into another part of reality because energy can't be destroyed. So that's what I mean when I say cow being reincarnated. You know, the I feel like I've got real solid evidence for that.
Hmm. But do you think?
And then,
No, I'm open to the possibility that reincarnation is a thing that happens. But relating that, I can't seem to relate that to a cow being slit for a steak.
okay,
Maybe I need to convince me how that relates more.
well, a cow's throat being slit for a steak. Okay, I wouldn't eat the steak when if my body craved a steak and I went to the local organic grass-fed store and there wasn't an already dead cow, I wouldn't go for it. I wouldn't go and kill a cow. Straight up.
Okay.
I would go and hunt. And I've never hunted an animal before, and I'm not sure if I could kill an animal. But if my intuition kept telling me that it needed to eat meat, I would go and hunt an animal. What?
So there isn't enough kind of like power in you to kill an animal, but there's
There
enough to
might
pay
be.
someone
There might
to
be.
kill an animal.
There might be.
Might be.
I always follow my intuition. So if my intuition says that you should go and learn to hunt now, because also that is part of rewilding and getting more connected to nature and also exploring experientially, if this is really the right thing to do or not, then yeah, I would go and hunt deer or a cow or whatever animal over in Australia, is perceived as perhaps one that is out of balance with its population or something like that. Like they hunt elk in certain parts or whatever.
Right.
And I would explore that.
Do you think like on that point, although I don't have any like evidence otherwise, do you think there is an option, a different option than just killing the elk to control the population? Don't you think is there another option than just going straight to killing them?
Well,
And if there is, why aren't people
mm,
following that and going straight to
yeah,
killing?
I'm not sure. Generally,
If there were
Mm.
dogs or cats in this situation, do you think people would choose
Yeah,
try and think
because
of a
they
different
have
option to going straight for
ideologically
killing?
conditioned perspectives
Hmm.
on the difference between domesticated animals and not. I don't.
S-
I don't see that. There's no difference to me between killing a kitten and killing a
hmm.
cow. The same thing.
Yeah,
Or a dolphin and a dog. Whatever it is.
but if you were given an option between killing a dog and a pig, and you had to kill either one, there wouldn't be like a I'm going to kill the pig instead of a dog thought in your mind. You just kill anyone happily. You wouldn't. There would be no like
I think I have.
bias.
I think I have some conditioning in
Hmm.
me still towards a pig. Yeah, um, but not that much
Hmm.
because I've been on a farm where I've interacted with pigs and they're lovely. They're not different to dogs.
Very
Just I've
similar.
been
Yeah.
exposed to dogs in more ways. Although I do, if I was to point out one difference in, say, let's say a chicken and a pig, even, I do, I do value competence in the world. I do value awareness, and there
Okay.
is a noticeable difference in the awareness of a pig and the awareness of a chicken, let's say. Or let's say
So that's
more
like a
obvious is a dog and a chicken, let's say.
okay.
From a
So
sociable aspect. And that's not to say that I'd kill one over the other. I'm just saying that generally, if I was really trying to look for a data point that I appreciate, even as human beings, I appreciate one of, let's say, uh, competency and awareness. Someone.
so would that justify killing any animal if they have less awareness than another, like humans included?
If
Would that work for
no,
any
if
animal?
we have to, then yes.
Right.
Because if
Okay.
if you're in a life, or if you're in a situation where it's about survival, which
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
with food for some people, then yeah.
I would. Yeah. I would agree if I had a between a chicken or a pig, I would definitely put that into consideration, and I'd just kill the pig. But yeah, I mean, in the situation where we are in now, the majority of people can choose their
Hmm.
food options, and yeah, don't have to buy steak or meat or cow's milk or eggs and stuff. And it's usually out of either false information, believing that it is good for you and you have to eat it to
Hmm.
be healthy, or habit or taste or culture. And all these things can basically be
Hmm.
debunked and talked about and with like vegans or
Hmm.
nutritionalists, and then you just go vegan. But yeah,
Hmm.
don't know
No,
where
I
I was
see what you
going.
mean.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I'm not on either side, but I've felt overall. What I can say is I felt the best in my entire life on intuition, and that's where it's landed me. It's landed me in a very unusual place of eating red meat so infrequently that you even said at first that I'm basically living a vegetarian food. Yeah, it's like I'm vegetarian 95% of the month, and then there's 5% when I'm not. So it doesn't make me a vegetarian. It doesn't make me not. It's just the intuition has led me there, and I'm open to seeing where that changes. I'm very receptive and listening all the time. So, as I said, the last 5 weeks I haven't eaten anything because I haven't felt like it. I went out to dinner earlier with friends at a restaurant. They're all eating meat. I got the vegetarian option. It's just what I felt like. But once the intuition comes back around, then I'll go for that. And
Mm.
I'm very perceptive on trying to see, is that conditioning, or is it just that my body's craving iron, maybe, and so I should be having some vegan alternative that gives me an iron source, and actually that's what my body's craving, not the meat itself. Who knows? Who knows? But the thing is also is that, like, unfortunately, yeah, I mean, I am on a hamster wheel of life. I'm holding up a lot of responsibilities, and there's only so much. When the information comes to me, then, like I've done a lot of research over the past. Um, what was I going to say? On a very, very subtle level, I'm sure there is an aspect of convenience that's in there. Because say for me to really check in and see whether the difference between that intuition is that I'm looking for an iron source and working out whether it's a vegan iron source or whether I just eat the meat, obviously I reckon there's going to be some convenience influence that's going to say, well, just eat the meat for now because, I need to get back and go on and go to this meeting and then, teach yoga here and do this. So I'm aware of that too. But that's the process, that's the process of all this, is that we are constantly adapting our course of where we're going and not getting stuck on simply listening in and integrating new wisdom and
Mm.
acting from there.
I mean, I don't have the knowledge, but would you say that you have the knowledge on like what's the best source of iron or calcium or whatever nutrient in vegan foods? Like, would you be able to like tell me like what's the best source of iron, vegan iron? What's the best source of calcium in plants? And or is that you? Are you just kind of going again? You said convenience, so you don't really think about that. You just kind of go straight for
Yeah, I'm
the
just giving
meat,
you an
or do
example.
you know what is the
I'm
best
just giving
option?
you an example
Mm.
of like maybe where that inner signal to want to eat meat is coming from. That perhaps it could be the body noticing that there's a lack in iron, so that's what it's jumping for. But no, I don't know what the iron vegetarian option is. Um, I know that iodine, one thing that I was lacking iodine that you can get from meat is seaweed. So I was eating a lot of seaweed for a while. There you
Mm.
go. Highest, one of the highest sources is tofu. But soy is terrible in my
Yeah,
body.
lentils, chickpeas,
I do not feel good on soy. I feel just as bad
right?
on soy as I do on milk. And soy is,
What about okay? Well, we can
yeah,
put
no, no,
soy
no,
away. Like
no, no,
forget
yeah,
about soy.
sure.
What about like beans, chickpeas, uh, yeah, kale,
Yeah,
raisins,
I eat
figs,
most of those except
fortified
for
breakfast
I don't
cereal.
eat processed food, so
Well,
I don't eat cereal.
yeah,
Fortified cereal.
yeah, but like,
I don't feel
but do you eat
very.
beans like and
I do eat
to a
beans.
suitable
I don't
degree?
feel great if I eat too many. They don't digest very well
Okay.
in my body. I felt the best. I felt the best on a paleo
Oh, really?
diet out of all of them, but which is negates all of the grains and most of the carbs. It's yeah, yeah. I don't. There's no clear answer here overall. Vegan society, keeping broccoli. What I should do, perhaps, if I really want to explore it, is the next time that I feel like I'm eating um, meat, and if I have the time to do it, is to go and get some blood test or nutritional test and see if there's something lacking somewhere on the spectrum, and that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah, that might be really useful. Just to see where
But
how your body is.
but as I said as well, like when I do eat the steak, I feel great from it, and I don't feel a conflict inside at the moment. So
Because it's like satisfying like a nutritional deficiency, maybe
could be
quickly.
that.
It's maybe you're just not eating, enough iron in plants or some other thing that you get from meat. And then when you do eat the steak, you're like your body's like, oh, thank God, I've been missing out on this nutrient for so long. And then you like,
It could be that.
yeah,
It could be that.
well, yeah, it's worth exploring. But yeah, it's been really interesting talking to you. I
Yeah,
will
we
check out.
spoke for
I will.
ages.
Yeah, I will check out your website.